The following program is made possible through funding from Duval County Schools.
Duval County Public Schools earn higher grades, a progress report on the superintendent search, and preparations are underway for next school year already. All ahead on this edition of School Matters. Duval County Public School students have concluded another school year, ending with exciting positive results on FCAT scores and school grades. We'll talk with members of the Duval County School Board and its current superintendent about these improvements, the progress of the superintendent search, and preparations for the coming school year in this edition of School Matters. Hello everyone, I'm John Thomas. Joining us now on today's program are Dr. Nancy Snyder, Duval County School Superintendent, Nancy Bronner, School Board Chair representing District 2, and Brenda Priestley Jackson, School Board Vice Chair from District 4. Well, Superintendent Snyder, this is the first time we've really had to chat since your first appointment here. What are your observations so far? I know some exciting things have happened recently, but overall, generally stepping into this role.
I think overall I have begun to feel the tremendous responsibility that comes with the role, and I think not just with the role, but also with the timing. Being in this period where we are searching for a new leader to come to this district, I feel an added pressure that we have everything looking attractive so that we can have the best candidates come to this school system. So the board has a broad array of candidates, and I think one of the things that was wonderful to see, not just with the FCAT scores, which it was great, 94 A's and B's, and 77% of the schools making A's, B's, or improving a grade. Nothing is as good as legitimate good work. So we're not putting a spin on it, but to be able to showcase at that press conference the true collegial spirit among the board members and all the principals. So really we demonstrated a team working together. I hope that that will be an attraction for candidates, that we are doing the right thing and we're doing it for all the right purposes and we're doing it together. This isn't an us against them. We're all in this together.
Would you say then that rather than in a period of transition, we're in a period of continuation?
Oh, absolutely. And that's why it's so important that whoever chooses to come to Duval County appreciates the work that has been done and then moves that forward even to the next level. But the underpinnings are all in place, and we want that to be very well known.
Nancy, speaking of roles as chair, is there a large differentiation between your role as chair and other board members in terms of, I guess, the way you serve your constituency, the way you serve the system?
Actually, I consider us all to be a team, and in every sense of the word. So my role as chair in that aspect is that of a facilitator, and there's a lot of creative energy among our group of 7, and sometimes I feel my main role is just to advance our agenda and try and keep us on track. We're very motivated to continue our reform efforts here in Duval County, and we feel a strong sense of responsibility to bring in the community into our decision making and help us all in Duval County understand the direction the board is going.
Something, Brenda, that seems to me to be perhaps a difficulty, and if you would address this, the diversity, socioeconomic diversity between the districts. Some people can provide better in certain districts for students and for schools than others. What kind of a strategy is employed to more or less create a level playing field for all of these districts?
I think just holding true to the board's vision and mission, which is high quality public education for all children, believing that all children deserve that. And through that, we've tried to make certain that we've aligned our priorities as a board with addressing the needs wherever they are. We often use the comparison, Nancy Bronner and I, that we're from Fletcher to Ribault to Baldwin. We want to have consistency with the quality of services. I think sharing with the public that providing for those services does not necessarily mean that the actual or an equal dollar amount goes into every school. The dollars go in to further the needs of the students in that school. Some schools receive more, some receive less, but our goal is not to ensure that they receive a lesser quality education, which means if you have a particular school that has more students that have reading deficiencies or math problems or challenges, we put the resources in those schools to address that particular need, at the same time addressing the needs of students in another school that are performing better to move them to the next notch and level.
Nancy, what would create a differentiation in funding the money that's available from one district to another? What's the main factor that creates that?
Between
Between
districts within the state of Florida?
Yes.
Well, it really is based on the district differential, and there's a complex formula, but we for years have been one of the lowest districts in school funding. Recently that a formula was adjusted, and we are much more in line with other districts now. So
when that money comes here, though, is there a difference in the money that goes from one a board member district to another? Are there any differences
not necessarily by board member district, but by school. So the dollar amount follows the child. Every child is a full-time equivalency and receives a certain dollar amount. But then based on need, there are additive dollars, and those can come from our federal funds through Title I dollars. We also have some discretionary funds that we would augment. Those schools that were our challenge schools this year, we were able to place substantial amounts of money because we had a major job to do there. And so if that requires having a class size that's significantly lower, then we fund additional teachers there. So we make decisions based on the need at the particular school to add dollars to their full-time equivalency.
I'm sure anyone who has any interest in public education at all in Duval County wants to know, where do we stand on the search for a new school superintendent? You've made it pretty clear that you're not going to be that person, or don't particularly care to be that person. But
I'm also pushing for that due date of September 1.
So where are we, Nancy?
We have contracted with a search firm, a national search firm. They're working with us in a lot of capacities, both to develop an attractive job announcement to put out into the country, and also to guide us through the various stages. The community input into the superintendent profile we're very focused on, and that will be early in July. So we're making progress, and we want the public to be fully aware of our actions and the reasons for our actions, and we hope we can engage all stakeholders in the community in participating with us. We're seeking a target of September, and we are so fortunate that we have Dr. Snyder willing and able to carry us through, and then she'll get to retire, but we'll miss her terribly. So we are enjoying this time together and yet pressing forward every week on the superintendent search.
I know we're all very excited about the FCAT scores and school grades and what have you that we have just seen, but for either of you, what in your mind is one of the most important things as we stand on the threshold of this next school year that the public should know, Brenda?
I would say not to be complacent. I am encouraged and invigorated that we can have a large urban district with no schools graded an F by the state. I still want to share with the public that we have a long way to go. We salute the challenges that were met by our students and the dedication and commitment that was shown by our teachers and school-based administrators. We would not be where we are today but for their commitment and dedication. Not that's just past year, but for the last few years. But I have to be very cautious with my community and say we still have a long way to go for our students to reach proficiency. And I share that with them to say be ever mindful and watchful. Sometimes the advantage, if you can say there was one, of the failing grade was it kept people vigilant and watchful. That kind of let a parent know in many instances my child may have deficiencies or weaknesses. I don't want anyone to be lulled by the fact that we don't have any F schools, that we don't still have the same number of significant challenges. We've moved our students further this past year than we probably have in a long time, but we still have a long way to go to ensure that all students in the district are proficient.
Nancy and Brenda, thank you very much for being with us and sharing this information. When we return, facing the greatest needs of public school students on School Matters. Let's look back now at the first year for two freshmen on the Duval County School Board. Joining me and Superintendent Snyder are Betty Burney, board member from District 5, and Tommy Hazuri, board member, District 7. Betty, you've been serving the needs of children for a long time in a lot of capacities. What do you see right now as you enter, I guess, your second year of your term, I guess? What are your observations as you look around?
My observations are that we have made great strides in Duval County. There are, however, some additional work that we have to do because we are still trying to make sure that our students are able to compete in the global economy. You know, John, it used to be that our students could compete just with students in Jacksonville or in Florida, but right now with the way that we are mass producing and working throughout continents, we need to make sure that our children are prepared academically, prepared socially and technologically in order for them to compete. So what I see is that we just need to take it up a notch right now and get ready to make sure that all children are able to compete globally.
Tommy, of course, you've had many constituents in your political past. How does your constituent today and your ability and the way you serve them, how has that changed? Of course, your constituents have been much larger in the past, I guess, from your district now.
But even though I represent a district, and as we all do, I still look at myself as representing the entire county again, and I think that's the way the school board members do as well. We have our own particular needs in our district, but we are policymakers that affect the entire seven districts that we have. And I don't, you know, the common thread for me as a legislator, as a mayor, and even now as a school board member has always been our children. Education is still the #1 issue that businesses look at, that we look at, and we, as Betty said, we have to continue to build on the successes that we've created each and every year, and we've got miles to go. We have a right to be proud this year, but I think all of us, it's incumbent on all of us to making absolutely sure that with our new superintendent coming, that there is continuity and stability, but yet at the same time that we build, not just on those grades that we have, but improving our reading scores, our math scores, and to remind the audience too that for those who got a level 1 on their reading scores this year and got a letter at home, that it started yesterday, but they can go call their local school and get involved and get enrolled in that reading program. We think it's very important for them to do that, and it's not too late.
Let's talk about challenges and rewards in the first year. Betty, what would you say to that?
Well, John, it's been an interesting year for me. I was sworn in November, and in December faced the possible closure of West Jacksonville Elementary School due to the fire. And that was a challenge because on the one hand we had the small school that when we look at it economically, you know, the numbers would say it's time to close. However, when you looked at what the principal was doing, what the parents and the teachers and the great strides that the children were making, it was just hard, I was hard pressed on me to say that this is something we needed to close. I thought it was a model, if you will, because I had never seen such cohesiveness in a neighborhood, especially that was considered by the sheriff's office as the murder zone. So that was the challenge, but we were able to do that. The board rallied together and the school district rallied together, and the school is open and they made a C, and they're doing quite wonderful. The reward for me has been the latest thing that has happened with Raines and Ribault, trying to make sure that we had those two high schools shored up with the same types of AP courses and bringing some additional students into the schools who can enhance those FCAT scores. So that's been the reward, that we are making sure that the high schools are all equal and that everything that's feeding into it is going to be in one equal footing.
And for you, Tom?
Well, actually, Betty and I have been here for 217 days and counting, and I am so proud of what the board has done. I've never had that opportunity. I did as a collegial body in the legislature with 120 members, and now with 7, and both groups and both bodies are policy-making bodies. And what Betty was talking about, again, it's a team thing, and these are issues that we needed to address. We certainly didn't want to see Ribault close. I'm so proud of what Ribault has done this year and going, even though they went from an F to a D, and as Brenda said earlier, to be able to address those needs, those challenged schools' needs, has been unbelievable, and even to a D. It shows that we know how to make progress. And we have seen that. I think there's another side. Education, the closing and eliminating the achievement gap is all of our goal. That's the bottom line. There's some facility needs we all know that we need to address. We know in the South Side area where the growth exists that we need a new high school. We're well underway in getting and making that happen. The North Side is experiencing a lot of growth. Each area of town I've seen a certain need. What is needed on the South Side is not necessarily needed on the North or the West Side of Jacksonville, but they have their needs too. But one of the most important things I think that all of us need to consider is that as we look at as we look at the board and the needs that we're trying to address, is that we don't leave a child behind. I think that's the important thing, and we, whether it's a Title I program, and one of the things I guess that I've observed is that it's not just the academic-minded schools that we look at with James Weldon Johnson or the School of the Arts or Douglas Anderson or La Villa or Paxson or Stanton, that we all have that. If you don't, some people feel, and I've observed this, that if you don't go to these schools, then everything else is second tier, and that is absolutely not true. We have some wonderful schools, elementary, middle schools, and high schools, and we ought to be cognizant of that and move forward into making sure that everyone is aware that we're building some great successes in Jacksonville.
No, I'd like to make one point, and I think it's such a credit to the current school board. They also are working, and the word cohesion was mentioned, but I've never seen that global view where you really are looking at the school district and making sacrifices to put programs in. Rains and Ribault were a good example where resources came from everyone's area to do the right thing for those that were in the greatest challenge. So the board is working very cohesively, which I think is also going to be an attraction for whoever comes in as the new superintendent.
And as you stepped into that role as superintendent, what was one of the most immediate challenges you saw for yourself personally?
Well, since it's been very, very recent, I didn't know which way the FCAT scores would go. I mean, we really were so pleasantly surprised, and so we did prepare for a story that might not have been as good, but we had worked so hard. So I have to say this was really just a joy to be in this position at this time, and I can really only wish that John Fryer was here with us. He deserves so much of the credit for the initiatives that are in place, and I wish he was here to share in it. It was great.
So as we have a new school year coming, what would you say to people out there who have a great interest in what happens in public education in Duval County? What would you say to them, Betty?
What I would say to them is to look forward for a wonderful new school year because of what the district is planning to do with high school reform. You know, one of the things that we need to make sure as a district that we do is to have smaller communities within the high schools so that no child is really left behind, so that we can pick up on a child's greatest needs, we can pick up on a child's greatest challenges and move them all towards their potential.
And Tommy?
I think to get the parents more involved, I think parental involvement is key. And we need to do that in every school, not just in those schools that excel, but those schools that we need to have help and to have parental involvement in. And then the superintendent. We're going to have an open public hearing and public meetings in the next couple of weeks, several of them, 4 or 5 of them around town, to do a profile on the kind of superintendent we want. We want the neighbors to come out to these meetings and tell us who they would like to see, male, female, black or white, educator, administrator, combination. Who do they want us to hire to help lead in the next, for the rest of this decade, hopefully?
Well, speaking of involvement, thank both of you for your involvement in our program. And coming up, Experience Speaks as we look ahead on School Matters. It's been accepted that schools have a greater chance of success when the entire community, parents and local businesses, become actively and effectively involved. This has happened to a great extent in Duval County, and nobody knows that better than our next guests, Chris Barnes, school board member from District 3, and Vicki Drake, board member representing District 6. Chris is the most experienced member, now that's a nice way of putting it, on the board. What growth or changes have you observed in your time here?
Well, I think that there are many things that I've seen. In the 4 years I've been on the board, I've seen a much stronger coming together of the community in support of the school district. When I first came on the board, everything was very negative. You constantly heard people criticizing us. In the 4 years, the Chamber, the Alliance for World Class Education, the Schultz Center, all these have pulled together, the mayor, the city council. We have everybody that's rallied behind us and has finally understood that this is a bigger problem than just the school district can deal with. It goes back to the communities the children are living in. Our teachers have had wonderful professional development that Superintendent Fryer brought to part of the district and part of the training for them. And I think that's been a big incentive and help for the teachers. but basically really the teachers' dedication and commitment to helping our students achieve and improve has been the biggest.
Very positive factors that she's outlined there, Nancy. Also, we talked earlier about a positive factor here in Duval County that may have some nationwide implications.
Yeah, it really is, I think, a tribute to the board that the Broad Foundation, which is a leadership institute out of the entire United States, chose 4 school boards that they thought had great potential to move up to the next level. Our Duval County School Board was chosen for this training, and so they're involved, and this is going on over several years. So this gives them an opportunity to take what's working very well and even ratchet it up so it's better. It's very positive.
And that should really help, I would imagine, if someone who's going to be an applicant for the superintendent's role, take the time to take a look at what goes on with the school board.
Absolutely, because a school board that is rancorous, has divisive issues that separate them, creates mentalities, us against them, that's not going to be attractive to an applicant. And you want people to come to this city to see that we have a lot in place. And hopefully the applicant pool will be very broad.
We've talked a lot, Vicki, about involvement.